Ford government facing mounting criticism over its new long-term care bill.
Moving him again and again concerns me.
We believe this bill should be withdrawn.
The PC's under scrutiny for their lack of clarity after only saying hospital patients could face heavy fees for refusing to be transferred to a long-term care home they don't want to go to. Plus,
symptoms usually begin with high fever, severe headache, stiff neck.
Toronto Public Health is declaring a meningococcal outbreak in the city that has left one person dead. What you need to know. And
now I can't take my dog inside the water.
It's green and slimy, and it has some regulars at Cherry Beach concerned. So what exactly is this gunk, and is it dangerous? Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. The Ford government is facing growing backlash over its new long-term care legislation. This comes as the PCs plan to bypass public hearings in order to quickly pass the bill, a bill which could see hospital patients being fined if they refuse to be transferred to a long-term care home that's not of their choosing. And while the Ontario Hospital Association supports this strategy to free up more hospital beds, families and advocates are speaking out tonight over the lack of clarity. Talia Ricci reports.
Robin Christie is watching Bill 7 closely, and she's worried about what it could mean for her 82-year-old father.
My main concern, obviously, is his disruption, keeping him safe.
The legislation would allow the hospital to find a patient a spot in a long-term care home that isn't on their preferred list.
Unless I know where he's going and, have visited the location, have checked out the complaints process, etc., I'm not comfortable with that.
Hospital beds weren't made for long-term care patients. And what's happening is clogging up the emergency departments, delaying surgeries. These problems are decades in the making.
The province has said that the legislation doesn't allow patients to be physically forced to move to a long-term care home. But yesterday, the Minister of Long-Term Care said people should absolutely be charged a fee in cases where patients refuse a transfer.
Nobody's going to be arrested. Nobody's going to be carted off against their will. If somebody refuses to move into a home, if they refuse to move into their home of preferred choice, then yes, should a hospital charge them? Absolutely, because we need those spaces for patients who need acute care.
A hospital's uninsured daily rates can be $1,500 a day or more.
And the homes that they're obviously going to be negotiating with tend to be the homes that people don't want to go to for very good reason.
Concerns are also being raised about how far patients could be sent from their families. Today, the Liberals said in some areas it could be hundreds of kilometers. CBC News asked the Ministry of Health to confirm this, but we didn't receive a response.
Often, the shortages of staff in long-term care are augmented by family members, coming in at meal times, providing care in a multitude of ways.
The bill is currently in its second reading. No committee meetings have been scheduled to gather public input on it.
We're calling on Doug Ford to withdraw Bill 7.
Dr. Sinha reflects on difficult conversations he's already having with patients.
I had a patient yesterday who said, if I'm being told I have to move to a home that I don't want to be a part of, I'd rather just die.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
With just a couple of weeks until the start of the school year, the province's Science Advisory Table is making recommendations on how to keep schools safe. As some of the permanent measures it recommends are striving for better air quality, washing hands, sanitizing surfaces, staying home when sick, and keeping up to date on immunizations. The advisory table is not recommending masks or social distancing, saying those temporary measures may adversely impact social connectedness, which is vital for children. It also said the degree of disruption to the daily school routine, health services, and school-related activities should be minimized whenever possible. East York mom Jessica Sennett says she's okay with sending her kids back to the school with these recommendations. She says she's being cautiously optimistic, but believes the right decision is getting kids back to a pre-pandemic routine.
We know COVID is here. It's here to stay, and we kind of have to figure out how we're going to live and move on, if that's a thing. So I feel like it's so important for these kids to be in school, to be social, to have each other. It's so good for their mental health and physical well-being.
Throughout the pandemic, Ontario had the longest school closures for in-person learning compared to other provinces and many North American and European jurisdictions. Toronto Public Health says one person has died after being infected with meningococcal disease. Now, officials have confirmed 3 total cases of the invasive disease caused by the meningitis bacteria. The 3 people infected are between 20 and 30 years old. All 3 were born in countries that do not immunize children against the disease. Adults aged 20 to 36 who have not been vaccinated against meningococcal disease are asked to contact their healthcare provider. The disease is spread by respiratory secretions, for example, saliva, and does require close, sustained contact. Here's more from Dr. Rita Shahan with Toronto Public Health.
Meningococcal disease is a fairly rare disease in Canada right now. It can cause severe symptoms, either meningitis or sepsis and infection of the blood system. And symptoms usually begin with high fever, severe headache, stiff neck, and people can progress to become quite ill very rapidly. Usually the cases we see are in very young children and high school age students, but this time we're seeing an outbreak in people aged 20 to 30. And we're wanting to remind those people in that age group to check their immunization records. The one thing linking all 3 individuals is that none had been immunized against meningitis. It is unusual to see 3 cases closely clustered together, and the use of the term outbreak is really a technical term that we need to use based on an increased number over what we expect to see.
She says the disease is rare and the vaccines are very effective. She's urging people who don't know their vaccination status to check their records to make sure they are up to date. Meanwhile, Toronto Public Health is also working to provide more options for people who want to get the monkeypox vaccine. The Ontario government is expanding vaccine eligibility with new provincial guidelines going into effect tomorrow. Greg Ross has those details.
The monkeypox vaccine is now available to more members of the LGBTQ community in Ontario, as well as sex workers. But the priority remains men who have sex with other men.
It's 99.3% men, and this is disproportionately impacting the men who have sex with men in the community.
Infectious disease physician Dr. Isaac Bogosh says the good news is not only are gay and bisexual men getting the vaccine, it's working.
Cases have gone down dramatically in Ontario. If you look at the epidemic curve, you had a big rise in cases throughout June, and they've come down very significantly over the past few weeks.
While things are heading in the right direction, there are concerns over messaging created by vaccine eligibility.
Our communities have a lot of history in terms of stigma and infectious disease.
Michael Quagg with the Community-Based Research Center says it's important for public health organizations to ensure that the LGBTQ community is not stigmatized.
We live in a society where there is still a lot of stigma and discrimination just toward people being gay.
Toronto Public Health will be hosting a dozen monkeypox vaccine clinics over the next 5 days all over the city. The goal is to make it as convenient as possible for those eligible.
We're really working very closely with our community partners to make sure that vaccination opportunities are available to those who are at risk. We've opened up a booking system recently so that people can make appointments for vaccination.
Dates, locations, and times for vaccine clinics are all listed on the City of Toronto website. The province is also urging anyone who has had known exposure or close contact with someone diagnosed with monkeypox to get a vaccine, even if they don't otherwise meet eligibility requirements. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's go to Dahlia Ashry now with a first look at your forecast. And Dahlia, a busy day for you today with all the watches and warnings.
That's right, Kelda. Earlier, we saw lots of rain. There was a severe thunderstorm watch that was in effect and a severe thunderstorm warning that was in effect for areas like Caledon and tornado watches as well. But things did calm down eventually, but rain is still the conditions that we're keeping an eye on, and that damp weather. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Some rain is expected later on in a few more days. The daytime highs in Toronto, 24 degrees. We factor in that humidity that was around today. It brought it up to around 30 degrees. Windsor, 28 degrees. Kitchener, 27. A little bit cooler in Barrie, 20 degrees. Now, are we expecting any rain tonight? The answer to that is Yes, we can already see that there is that precipitation activity in other areas, and that will carry through overnight, and there will be rain and some cloudy periods. Now, as you head to work tomorrow, you will see some cloudy periods as well, and some scattered showers throughout the day. Tonight, temperatures will drop to 19 degrees, 80% chance of rain and cloudy periods. Tomorrow, the rain will continue as well, 60% chance of rain and a risk of a thunderstorm, so prepare your umbrellas because you'll need them. Kelda?
Thanks so much, Dahlia. Toronto police say they've made an arrest following a fatal stabbing last weekend. Leon Tyrell was stabbed inside the lobby of a Scarborough apartment on Glen Everest Road near Kingston Road on Saturday. The 38-year-old died in hospital shortly after. Sathis Kumar Rajaratnam of Toronto has been arrested. The 34-year-old charged with second-degree murder. Police had issued a Canada-wide warrant for his arrest on Monday. Anyone with more information on the case is asked to come forward. Well, months after the initial surge in demand, people heading to Service Canada locations are still facing long lineups.
It is very important to get a SIN number because I have to do part-time work in order to manage my other expenses, other than academics. So I need to work here and I need to get my SIN number.
Many of the people outside this Service Canada in Brampton are international students. They're hoping to get a social insurance number before the fall semester begins. Service Canada says it's aware that long lineups continue to be an issue. The agency says employees across the country are working overtime and on weekends to meet continued demand for passports. Despite all that, Service Canada also says an increased demand is normal for this time of year. Foreign students are recommended to apply online. But these students say they'd rather wait in line for a few hours as online applications can take over a month to be processed. The NDP says the province is failing to protect home buyers who are looking to purchase pre-construction homes.
Home buyers deserve protection. If you have signed a contract saying a developer will build a home at a set price, that contract needs to be honoured. The Ontario government needs to make sure these developers honour the contract.
It's been a year since the province promised to crack down on housing developers who cancel projects or demand buyers pay more after purchase agreements are already signed. The government has increased the amount in fines the Home Construction Regulatory Authority can impose, but the authority has yet to issue any. In a statement, the housing regulator says investigations take time to conduct properly. Meanwhile, the province maintains bad actors in the industry will face consequences. If you've taken a walk along Toronto's Cherry Beach recently, you may have seen or gotten a whiff of the green, slimy gunk that's been appearing along the waterfront. So what exactly is that stuff? And should you be worried? We sent our Natalie Collada to find out.
On a hot August afternoon, it's not the sight or smell beachgoers were hoping for.
It's very bad. Before is good. Now I can't take my dog inside the water.
We see it, we avoid it.
Along Cherry Beach today, a lot of this. Slimy vegetation rotting under the hot sun.
People are often concerned when they see something green washing up on their shorelines.
We took pictures of the gunk and showed it to clean water advocates.
This photo looked like it was a mixture of what is called submerged aquatic vegetation, so things like coontail, but also a form of filamentous algae that we think is probably Cladophora algae. Typically, it washes on shore when it gets to excessive levels due to excess nutrients in our waterways. And as it rots, it creates a really unsightly odor, and it doesn't look great. Some municipalities even post their beaches due to the presence of it, but generally it's just a nuisance.
CBC also sent the photographs to Ontario's Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. They did not respond in time for broadcast.
I wouldn't be overly concerned about this one. This is also a really low amount of algae that we've seen. There are certain areas in the western basin of Lake Ontario where it just piles up in dump truck size amounts.
Ford says anyone concerned about what they're finding washing up along Toronto's beaches should call 311. Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. Canadians tend to Pay pretty close attention to the best before dates on food products, but some experts say those labels are contributing to food waste because consumers are taking them too literally, treating them the same as expiry dates. And as Cameron McIntosh explains, there's now growing calls for the removal of those labels.
These are $3.65.
Farm Fresh in downtown Winnipeg. It's not just the lure of straight to the plate. For many here, it's also about stretching budgets.
Lots of times I'll have a list in my mind or menus in my mind, and I'll come to the market and I'm like, oh, plan B. You have to look for the bargains.
Vendors are keenly aware of it.
While many are trying to stretch their food buying dollars a little further, others are looking at the other end, what's being thrown out.
Relative to the United States and the United Kingdom, Canadians waste more food, about 79 kilograms per person per year. That's about 174 pounds. Some in waste management see best before dating as part of the problem. Food thrown out too soon.
Whether it be at the consumer level, so what a consumer has bought and is in their cupboard, or just throughout the chain, such as, for example, a retailer not being prepared to take a product from a distributor because there's insufficient gap between when they're buying it and when it says best before.
Several British retailers say they're scrapping best before dates on some products that may decline in quality but are still fit to eat.
People are obsessed, people are hooked, people are addicted to best before dates.
Sylvain Charlebois is an expert in food supply management. He says Canadians are conditioned to follow the label. Simple rule, he says, abide by expiry dates. Best before dates could be viewed more like guidelines.
If the product has a best before date and it's past that date, doesn't mean it's bad.
Back at the farmer's market, no labels here. The notion of keeping food around longer depends on who you ask.
As long as it doesn't smell bad or whatever, I'm okay.
I don't really look up the due-by dates, except sometimes with milk or something.
Never a problem in my house. I think it all usually gets pretty consumed up pretty quickly.
Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And you are looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline. A bit cloudy tonight in the city with light rain. Currently 23 degrees, but feeling closer to 30. Let's go back to Dahlia now with a more detailed look at your forecast. And Dahlia, wet conditions continuing into tomorrow.
That's right, Kelda. It's going to be a rainy day tonight and tomorrow. Some parts of Ontario saw thunderstorms and heavy rainfall. Orangeville and Georgetown and Halton and Caledon had a severe thunderstorm warning that was in effect, and a severe thunderstorm watch was also in effect for parts of the GTA. We are going to expect those damp conditions to continue until tomorrow, and then there is some light at the end of the tunnel. The daytime highs in Toronto, 24 degrees, a little bit cooler in Barrie, 20 degrees, Windsor, 28. Now, of course, there is that humidex that factors in and brings up that heat, making it feel like minimum 30s. And is there any rain tonight? Well, like I said, we are expecting some rainfall and cloudy periods as well. As you head to work tomorrow, those cloudy conditions will continue, and there's scattered showers throughout the day around 11 a.m. and that will start to clear up throughout the day, and then giving us some lovely summer-like and sunny conditions on Saturday. So a great chance to head outdoors, enjoy your Saturday and Sunday. There's some dry conditions, so if you haven't hit up the CNE, that's something you might want to look into, because Friday night is most likely not the night you want to do that. Tomorrow it'll feel more like 32 degrees, and like I said, there is that risk of a thunderstorm, and it will be raining as well, so your umbrella will be needed. There's thunderstorm watch for most of the area. I mean, Markham, St. Catharines, some heavy rainfall in those areas. Cloudy conditions in Hamilton, and then Toronto and Oshawa overnight will be seeing rainfall as well. Tomorrow, like I said, rain, that's the story for this week. And those dry conditions Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday and Tuesday as you head back to work, still that rain that continues. You will need your umbrella, but take advantage of Saturday and Sunday because those dry conditions won't be sticking around for too long. Kelda?
Thanks so much, Dahlia. Conservation advocates have been campaigning against plastic six-pack holders for decades. These holders don't degrade over time, and they are known to be a hazard to wildlife. The beverage industry has been slowly moving away from the rings, and in Canada, the craft beer business has been leading the way. Take a look.
The previous can carrier that we were using was this, very common in the craft beer industry, hard plastic HDPE material of the PacTech, and we have now since moved to this carrier. The Can Color Classic is just a paperboard material which is recyclable. We started with a kind of soft market trial. This has stood up very well. So the can carriers themselves come in this sheet of 6. The sheet is put into the bright green guide there. It is then put over top of the flat of cans, and it is just a simple press with an operator, and it's applied, creating this kind of angle which holds the can in place. There's actually 1,800 sheets in this box, whereas a box of 700 of these is about 3 times the size. It takes many, many decades for plastic to degrade in a landfill, whereas it's still just paperboard. It should hopefully decompose and return to the earth a lot sooner than a piece of plastic. But please recycle it. We look around the world and we see Garbage Island in the Pacific Ocean, landfills are overflowing, and if everyone just does a small amount, it makes a big impact.
And finally tonight, there's usually a mix of emotions for kids and parents when back to school time comes, but with the rising cost of goods, it can also be an especially hard time for some.
It takes a village, it takes a community for our youth to go back to school and have a good positive year. They've been impeded with the last 2 years due to COVID restrictions, what have you. So something like this is just to get them in the right frame of mind. And we celebrating. So we're celebrating not only community, but we're celebrating education as well.
Known to many as the godfather of Canadian hip-hop, Maestro Fresh West was at Scarborough Town Centre today, giving away backpacks and free school supplies. There was even a chance for one lucky kid to win a laptop. In between giveaways, the Scarborough native was also launching his new book. It's called Stick to Your Vision, Young Maestro Goes to School, the story of a young boy and his memories of going to school in Toronto. We love to see it. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Chris Glover has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.